Any other questions, for staff?
Okay, any other, I'm not sure where we left off. I think we're looking at line items, a variety of budget, department budgets.
Mhm.
Just, I don't know if you marked where we left off.
I did not.
But we're happy to take it up at any place you'd like.
Don't think we discussed SDCs. As I have some notes on here in street fund. So I think we should start in SDCs.
Okay.
And that would be on page 56 of your budget.
So actually, SDC discussion starts on page 53. And it generally reminded us.
Yeah, transfers that.
And that generally describes what SDCs are. Anybody have any question about what an SDC is? And the expenditures are really in two categories. One is expenditures that are eligible as going forward, increasing the capacity of that particular system, increasing the capacity of the park, increasing the capacity of the storm drain or the water system. And the other is to pay for past increases in capacity.
For what increases?
Past increases in capacity. So some cities use that for debt service on water bonds or other activities that, so you build a water tank and that water tank 3 years ago that you built increases the capacity. You're still making payments on it. Those would be eligible for a part of the SDC fund. This coming year, we're going to be recommending that you take a look at all of the SDCs. Make sure they're keeping pace with the cost of construction. Comments on the SDCs, Tessa?
Not at this time, except maybe one thing about the SDC fund, I did not budget any transfers out to any other funds. Normally, you would see transfers from SDCs to parks or SDCs to streets. At this point in time, did not do any until we identified the need for those transfers.
So essentially, we haven't identified a project that would fit the SDC funding category.
That fits.
That takes us, I think, to the capital improvement fund. Kind of a unique fund in the sense that you have a project list that is largely unfunded. And we put it all in here this year because I think maybe there's been some misunderstanding in the past that if a project showed up on the capital improvement list, that somehow that means it was funded and it's ready to be built. And prompts questions about, well, where is it? We included it on the capital improvements list. But for many of the capital improvements, in fact, most of them, I would say, there's no identified funding source. And for many of them, there's funding that's being set aside that would pay for a portion of the cost. But using it as an example, in parks, we've got the splash pad, but we have a Newbury Park improvement listed at 359,000. And is there funding for that in the budget?
Only 30,000.
So there's only 30,000 actually set aside for that project in the budget. So these are not projects that are coming next year. These are, we included these because we wanted to make sure you knew that we didn't lose track of these projects. But that revenues are not sufficient to do all of this work. And in some cases, we're continuing to gather funds, but largely they're unfunded. So go ahead.
Want to point out to you that within the Parks Fund, Parks projects, it's important to note that we did not budget for grant revenues, for we don't know if we're going to be receiving grant revenues until September of this year. So we try to take a very prudent approach to that. Also, I want to point out to you that with the transfers from the Foss Road to the Chuck Roberts Park splash pad, I know there was discussion this last 2 weeks ago about that. I don't know if it was something that was a priority or not. If we do receive the grant funding for the town park, the skate park, we'll be able to move the monies that's currently budgeted here towards the maybe the tennis courts if you choose to go down that path. But it's probably not enough to pay for the tennis courts the way they are. So there's probably going to have to be some discussion on, as soon as possible, where you want to locate the tennis courts and how big you want them, so we can start working on RFPs, looking for grants and such, so we can get this project to go.
Another thing that could impact this is that I had a conversation with the Medford Water Commission a couple of weeks ago about water conservation grants. Thinking that perhaps there's a grant out there that would pay for the splash pad project. So I just received a listing of potential grant sources for that project from Medford Water Commission. And we're going to be pursuing those. So the source of funding for that project may change during the course of the year. And my strategy is to wait. Let's use funding that we may be able to acquire specifically for that project, while retaining the flexibility of funding that isn't restricted so much. That's what we're doing with the skate park. Waiting to see in September if funding is allocated for that project by the state. And so we don't have to use ARPA funding or other funding that could be moved to some other project.
And what's really important to note about the ARPA funding is that we have to have those ARPA funds, how to say, dedicated. We have to tell them we are going to spend our money by the end of this calendar year, by December 31st. And it has to be completely spent by December 31st of 2026. So when we choose projects for that use ARPA funding, we have to make sure that we're able to finish those projects within that amount of time. And that's the reason why staff chose to go with the splash pad first. But this is very, I would say this is fluid and it's very subject to change. And I think things will come into clarity later on in this calendar year.
You need to have the flexibility to change during the course of the fiscal year as other funding sources become known and available, see if they fit in the plan. So having the project as a budgeted item in the budget does not mean that tonight you're approving that project. We're using that project as a placeholder, as a guideline for the use of those capital funds, and that would be revisited during the course of the year as the funding picture changes or as perhaps other priorities arise. No? Nothing else? Not much left here. You got water fund. Let's talk a little bit about that. So I think we've talked a lot about the water fund and the rate setting process, and looks like we're headed in the right direction. Do we have any questions on the water fund? Do you want to add anything?
No, not at all. I'm very pleased that it looks like we're going in the right direction with the water fund.
Does anyone have questions about the proposed budget? Anybody have something? I don't understand this.
So, under the current unfunded water fund line items, an additional FTE in the water fund, 26,000. So is that FTE not employed currently? This is, whereas,
It's an FTE that is a percentage based, that
Oh,
FTE,
right.
yes, it's.
Okay.
The FTE would reside, part of the time would be in parks, part of the time would be in streets, the other part of the time would be in water. And I don't quite remember the percentage split, probably in the 30% split between the funds.
so essentially being subsidized by the other department?
No, I would not say subsidized. We try to budget where people spend their time. That's the most important thing. That person, when a person in public works, they are very flexible in their duties. They may be working in streets one day, or they may be called to do meter reading, or they may be called to pull weeds or mow the lawns over in our parks. So it's an estimated amount of time.
So I guess I'm just asking why it says it's unfunded.
We need another person. We're
So-
short-staffed.
So it is somebody who's not employed right now?
Correct.
Okay.
That
okay,
that
that's-
person normally would be doing all those things.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Probably didn't ask it well.
But right now, we're in the process, aside from the budget, in the process of kind of assessing where we are with staffing on the public works crew. Right now, the crew's smaller than it normally is. We had been operating with a five-member crew, including the superintendent. Right now, we're operating with three. And three temps that were hired basically to undertake the weeding this year while the regular crew who has training in water services and such are focusing on that activity. So we're assessing what's the right size for the crew. It's definitely more than three. And then do we seasonally supplement that with seasonal workers to take care of the heavy and the very labor intensive weeding activity? Maybe we need more. I think we were budgeted for one seasonal worker. And we bumped that up to three this year because we're just overwhelmed by weeds. So we may find ourselves, well, not may, we will find ourselves at the end of the season, looking back and assessing, well, what's the right size of the crew year round? We have a year-round crew this big, and then do we just regularly plan in the summer to expand it to this big to take care of the increased workload? So the recent departures from the crew have really pushed us to look at what the appropriate staffing there.
And certifications.
That's the other issue that Tessa mentioned, is that our public works crew are just not just maintenance people. They need to have certifications to do the water system work, certifications to do to operate the correct equipment. And right now we have one certified water operator and one certified commercial driver.
One certified what? I'm sorry.
Commercial driver.
Oh,
We just added a part-time street sweeper operator whose sole function will be to operate the street sweeper 1 day a week. And he's a retired truck driver, so he has a CDL. Previously, the person who's currently the supervisor is the only person on the crew who is certified to drive the street sweeper and operate any of the larger trucks.
Another issue with public works is that water leaks have to be, let's say, for instance, we have a leak on the street over on, let's say, Park Street. We have maybe 3 people on the crew. Sometimes we have to put off repairing the water leaks because we don't have enough crew members to do traffic control, to operate machinery, to do all the things that need to be done to fix the leak safely. 3 is generally not enough because you do need it, and it also depends on where on the street it is. If it's in the middle of an intersection, you're going to need more than 3 people.
So there are a lot of issues at play there. Some of that work could possibly be contracted. We have a union shop to deal with, so that's a bargaining matter for the contract out work. So there are, a lot of different elements that affect the decision. We don't have anything else, do we? We have some other items on the agenda, but that's the basic report on the budget. Not the other items on the agenda. Item 3, approval of the tax rate. You really don't have much of a choice on the tax rate. You don't have the authority to increase the rate. The rate is currently $3.2316 per thousand assessed valuation. The valuation can go up as much as 3% a year. You don't have control over that. That's something the county assessor does. So you don't have the authority to raise the tax rate. If you want to lower the tax rate, that gets real complicated. I don't know of any cities that do that. It's considered to be the permanent rate, unless it's increased by the voters. So it's rather a fluctuating rate, but we would need for the committee to approve the tax rate of 3.2316 per thousand assessed valuation, and that is on page 19 of the budget document. So the motion would be to approve and recommend to the city council that tax rate for the fiscal year 2024-25.
Wait, it says that's the current tax rate.
That's the current rate.
So that's not what we'd be recommending. We'd be recommending.
The city doesn't have, the budget committee and the city council don't have the legal authority to change the rate.
Okay.
You're required to approve it every year, but you don't have any authority to change it.
So who can add the 3%? I mean, what's that? Is that just something
The
the city?
3% that's applied to the assessed valuation is a determination by the county assessor. And it's not to exceed 3%.
Yeah, and
Oh, Commissioner-
yeah, and just to be clear, it's the assessed value of the homes that are increasing 3%, not the tax rate. Tax rate stays the
Oh,
same
oh.
forever. It's just what it's taxed
Thank you.
upon goes up. Yeah. I can give you a motion if you like.
Okay,
I move to approve the current property tax rate for the city of Talon of $3.2316 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? No, okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Cole? Yes. Member Panemra?
Yes.
Member Pestizo?
Yes.
Member Byers?
Yes.
Member Parra Miller?
Yes.
Member Felicia Hazel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So item 4 would be consideration of approval of the budget as you've discussed it and recommending it for approval to the city council. And we would incorporate the changes that we've discussed here in the fund balances and inserting the discretionary funding for the council budget.
Yeah, I didn't hear, how much funding for the council?
I heard 15,000, that's what I wrote down.
An additional 15,000 or a total?
There was no amount for council, there was an amount that was for all of the
Oh, okay.
committees and commissions. This was in addition to that, so it'd be $15,000. I can give you the line item. if you
Council
wish.
discretionary fund. Okay,
We have a motion?
I'll give it a shot. I move to approve the City of Talon proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 to 2025 with the addition of a $15,000 line item for council discretionary fund and the changes as outlined in the memo from the finance director of May 8th, 2024. And recommend adoption to the city council.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on that?
I just want to check with staff and make sure I got all the right words in
You
there.
Outstanding.
Any discussion? No? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Cole? Yes. Member Panemra?
Yes.
Member Pestizo? Yes. Member Byers?
Yes.
Member Parra Miller?
Yes.
Member Felicia Hazel?
Yes.
All yeas.
Okay, so item 5 would be consideration and approval of the state revenue sharing. So the state provides the city with a share of state collected revenue. Cigarette tax.
Diesel.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, cigarette tax, alcohol tax, a variety of state taxes. The state shares that with local government on a per capita basis. The amount that's included in the budget for this is $171,969, which is lower than last year by about 40,000. They've cut back on sharing. The other factor, of course, is that it's per capita. So as because our population is lower, we're getting less money. And because the population of the state is growing, and this is shared on a per capita that factor influences the per capita distribution. So this is actually the first year that I've seen in the almost 20 years I've been in Oregon, that the per capita distribution has declined. As well as the effect of our lower population. But we need to recognize that and approve receiving the state tax revenue sharing and applying it as shown in the budget. So we need to approve receiving the state tax revenue and applying it as shown in the budget.
Do you have a motion? Member Byers.
Thanks. I move to approve the state revenue sharing tax for fiscal year 2024-2025 and applying it as outlined in the budget.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? No. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Member Coley? Yes. Member Panemra?
Yes.
Member Pestizo?
Yes.
Member Byers?
Yes.
Member Parra Miller?
Yes.
Member Felicia Hazel?
Yes.
All yeas.
We don't have anything else, do any of you? I can
Thank
tell
you.
this has been an exciting. I want to thank Tessa. She did a terrific job on putting the budget together. She's really the person responsible for that. And also for filling in for the city attorney.
Well, thank you. So there are no other questions for staff. We'll, oh, geez.
If you have any lingering questions,
Yeah,
call us.
okay. So the budget committee meeting is adjourned at 6:39 PM on June 5th. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chair.
Be on the June 20th city
we-
council meeting.
Did we approve the Tura budget?
Yeah.
We did? All right, okay, great. I couldn't remember.